and this is my husband Mike, and this is my first storytime video, and we're going to be talking about my night terrors. Now, night terrors are not the same as sleepwalking. I have been sleepwalking pretty consistently since I was about 7. Pretty much I'll do something a little bit weird, and then if somebody else interacts with me, they'll usually tell me to go to bed, and I'll be happy to do so, apparently.
My favorite one was one time when we were still living in Vacaville, and
You have a favorite.
yeah, and she wakes me up and she's like, Mike, she's like shaking me, Mike. I'm like, what, honey? She's like, I want to be the best panda. And I was like, okay, honey, you are the best panda. Go back to sleep. And then it's just like, okay. And then she does this little thing and like smiles and like just goes back to sleep. And there's a lot of things here and there where she'll just stand up and say something, or she'll get up and like walk around the room or walk to the door.
Anyway, so the night terror started after my surgery experience, and I made a video about this actually, and I'll link that below. It's something called anesthesia awareness, where basically I was paralyzed but conscious for my entire surgery to remove my pheochromocytoma. But I ended up with PTSD from that, and even though I did a 1.5 years of trauma therapy, and talking about it feels better, and I don't feel like I'm reliving it in a traumatic way anymore like I used to, I still have the night terrors. Night terrors happen at a completely different part of your sleep cycle than sleepwalking does, and mine started out between, like 2 and 4 a.m., I think, and the window just kept getting more and more narrow, and we make note of it whenever I have one and check the clock. And now, when I do have them, it's always between 2:55 a.m. and 3:05 a.m. It's gotten really narrow. So there was a while there where I was just keeping myself awake through that time window because I was so stressed about it and anxious. And what I was going through is I was having a lot of especially liver problems at that time, and apparently like that's the time of night when your body is repairing your liver. So it could be that if you have other ailments, these night terrors could be triggered during that time of night as well.
I don't really remember the first one so much. Like, it was just they started
a bit smaller.
They started in Vacaville a couple months before we moved to Pacifica. Mm-hmm. Basically, initially it would just be she would like shoot up out of bed, like sitting straight upright, and just be like yelling like, what the is that? And like she'd just be pointing to something in the room and just be freaking out, and it would never be like something she could describe. It would just be like, there's something right there, there's something right there, what is that, what is it, what is it?
And it was harder to wake me up from that. Like if I'm sleepwalking and you try to wake me up, it's pretty
exactly
easy.
Like I would be talking to her, and it's like, it's nothing, go back to sleep. I would try that because your initial reaction is, what the hell is it? And you look around the room and there's nothing there. The night terror, she'd almost be argumentative, like very, very insistent that something was there when it wasn't. And it would be kind of having to like reassure her and like that everything's okay, that I got her back, everything's all right, I'm gonna protect her. And then eventually, like in the middle of like a hug or whatever, or holding her hand or squeezing her, she would wake up and like, what's going on? And I explained to her, and then she'd like
my heart would be pounding.
We used to check her blood pressure because after her surgery and everything, she had or before her surgery, she had very, very, very high blood pressure.
And I had to keep checking my blood pressure for a while. I know with my sleepwalking, from what I've been told, I interact with my environment really well. Like I can get up and pour myself a glass of water and not have an issue.
Doorknobs confuse you a little bit. But.
Yeah. I've been sleepwalking since I was 7, and only once have I made it out of the house, which is really scary because that was in Pacifica, and there are like coyotes out there.
Oh,
and I just
like
stood there with my hands on my hips. And then I came back inside and went back to bed.
I followed you out, and you were just like, yeah, that's right.
That's so scary. Yeah, but that was a sliding door.
So
One that really scared me was when you told me I was trying to jump out the window.
Yeah, that
scared me.
That's right. You got up, and you were kind of like putting your hands on the windowsill.
Yeah,
and it was pretty high, and you were like
through.
trying to like climb over. You were just trying to like get out. You're like, I need to get out of here. There was another one that you had where you saw like this was in our apartment by the beach in Pacifica. You mentioned that there, like, you were like talking. You saw some sort of figure, and you're like, "What do you want? What do you want with this? What do you want?"
Oh God.
And I was like,
Yeah, when you described that to me, that was really, really scary.
Yeah, like you saw someone or something. You're like, what are you? What do you want? That was weird. I can say that before you had the big ones, like the big one with the scream, I would say that like I got kind of annoyed initially, but then once we had the big ones, like, and seeing how terrified and how much they affected you, I kind of like. I don't get annoyed. I get more annoyed by the sleepwalking ones, but they're funny.
The sleepwalking is pretty funny. The
Sleepwalking ones
sleepwalking's
are
always
funny.
been funny.
It's always
for my
just
family.
it's just always like an inconvenience on those. The first big one was when we first moved to Pacifica. I woke up to this just horrible scream. Something like, you picture, like, you see like all the actresses screaming in like slasher films and their paranormal activities and all those weird movies where like they have that terror scream. It had nothing on this. Like, it just had this weird kind of like resonance to it. This scream, I can't describe it to this day. I can still hear it. I can't put into words how it is. Like, it had tiers where it started off one way and then it got louder and then shriller.
Yeah, and I remember it, and I honestly like needed therapy to just deal with the memory of what that sounded like.
Terrified me hearing that. And then what was creepier about it was not only was there this scream, she got up and she was kind of like started like backing out of bed, like almost like she's being dragged. And like when she kind of like fell off the back of the bed, she kind of slid off, and it really did look like she was getting dragged off the bed. And then once she was off the bed, it didn't stop. And not like she didn't just wake up like you think she would. It was
and there was a big gap. There was like 1.5 to 2 feet between the bed and the wall, and I hit the wall so hard that I put a dent
in the wall,
in the drywall, and I got a hairline fracture in my left rib.
Kept crawling backwards, like she kept going even though she was already hitting the wall. Jump out of bed, kind of pick her up, try to all that stuff, trying to comfort her, and then like she's not waking up. I'm kind of like shaking her, trying to get her to wake up, and then finally she like wakes up and I'll let you tell that part, like how you felt, what you.
That was the first time I ever remembered any part of what I was dreaming about when I had a night terror. With all the ones before, I would wake up and have no idea what I was dreaming about. For a second, I wouldn't know where I was. I would just be completely confused and terrified. My heart was pounding. I just felt extremely scared. And with this one, I remember the tail end of the dream, and I remember a little bit of waking up, that transitional time. And in the dream, I was in an attic of an old house, and where the eaves met the floor, there was like a gap, and it dropped off into blackness and nothingness, essentially. I had never felt so cold in my entire life, and actually when I woke up, I was freezing cold. Like, my hands were ice cold, and like I was shivering because I was freezing. And in the dream, I was being dragged out into this abyss of nothing. It was like a vacuum in my mind that was hell. Like, there was no afterlife, and I was just going to be dragged out into this and cease to exist. And I've never believed in like a traditional Catholic version of hell, the fire and brimstone. I've just never believed in that. I've always more believed in like a separation of God and kind of like an earthly state being the metaphorical hell. And that experience, it terrified me. But I spent like 2 full therapy sessions working through just that experience of that night terror with my psychologist. It was so traumatic and terrifying because it brought the night terrors to this new level where they were dangerous. Like before, I had run into walls, but it was never something like this where I'd actually like really, really hurt myself.
They would happen from time to time. You'd be freaked out. We'd stay up and talk for like 10 minutes, and you'd be able to go back to sleep. Starting here, this is the first time where we watched an episode of Dexter or American Horror Story or anything like that. Or even just like a kind of an action movie that had a lot of stimulation. Then we would watch that. At that time we were watching Frasier.
Yeah.
So we would stay up and watch, an episode of Frasier.
But then if someone died or something, we'd have to watch another
yeah,
episode.
and then once we were done with Frasier, I think we went to finish
But that was all that we did at that point to try and curb them.
It was just
and
watching
then,
happier things before going to sleep.
And then I had the really scary one when we moved down by the beach.
Yeah, and that one, there was one night where I felt like a pressure on my legs, and like I hear some noises, so I wake up and Katrina was like crouched up near the foot of the bed, kind of like hovering over my legs, so I could see her back, but she was kind of like looking over her shoulder at me, and she was making these really
creepy, like Linda Blair status.
kind of like Gollum, or Smeagol, I guess.
Okay.
Like that, or the witch in Left 4 Dead, for those of you guys who played it, and actually the witch is probably the best.
You said the sounds were like the witch.
The witch, yeah. I mean, you were doing this weird crouching thing, but the noises, like she was like doing these weird grunts, but they're pitch squeal things too. Like I can't. And then I was like, "Honey, are you okay?" And then she turns, and she leapt at me, and so like one leg landed on like this side, like the left side of my chest, and the other leg like landed on my chest, kind of like knocked the wind out of me a little bit. Like so she like leapt at me. She was like going for my throat, like she was trying to like strangle me. So I'm like batting her arms away, and after a couple, and I'm the whole time I'm like, Katrina, it's me. Like, and I was terrified at the point. I realized what was going on, that she's having a night terror, but she was
actually never attacked you.
But she had never attacked me before. So she's like lunging at me, and I'm kind of just batting her hands away, trying to like protect my face and my throat. Once I started doing that, she started fighting back even more. So she started actually like scratching at me. So I'm putting out my arms to try to scratch me, and she actually did like end up scratching me open. Yeah, and I do have a little scar, nothing too major, but I do have a small scar on my wrist.
Poor baby.
And it got so bad that like this was going on for like a good 30 seconds of us kind of like wrestling around, and I'm pinned under blankets and under her.
Did I get like weirdly strong or something? Well, that's weird.
You are freakishly strong.
Freakishly strong.
But it got to the point where, and you would have obviously had adrenaline going and stuff like that, but it got to the point where I was like, I need to stop this, because like she had already scratched me open, and like I had a bunch of little scratches on my arms, but only one that bled, and she'd hit me in the face a couple times, not like a full-on punch, but she made contact. So finally, like I got to the point where like I didn't know what to do, so like I actually like cocked a fist and was getting ready to hit when she's like snapped out of it. Like I
would have punched me too, for sure.
I had like my fist, and I was like kind of like pushing with my left arm up, trying to like get her away from me so I can actually get my arm up, and then I was gonna hit her, and then she snapped out of it. Same thing as what I kind of had to explain. It was like she was freaking out. What's going on? What's happening? What's up?
That one was really hard for me to snap out of. I was really confused.
And so I had to explain what happened, and she's like, "What's the matter? Like, what's the matter?" Like, so like at first I wasn't trying to tell her exactly what happened, but I was just like, "Oh, you had a night terror. You were sitting up, and you're like, what happened? Like, you look freaked out." I'm like, "No, it's fine." She's like, "What happened?" And then she's like, "You look terrified. What's going on?" Like, I'm like holding my wrist, and she's like, "What's going on?" And then she sees that I'm bleeding, and she realized that she had done something.
Yeah.
So that one was tough. I think we ended up staying up.
We were up for like 3 hours.
A couple hours later. I don't think I went to work the next day. I remember like when we did go to sleep, you were like trying to sleep on the couch, and I was like, "No, like that's dumb." You're like, "Well, are you gonna sleep on the couch?" I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna sleep on the couch." And you thought I was crazy for not.
What I remember from what I was seeing, in my perspective, there was something big and black and furry that I was fighting, and I was trying to strangle it, whatever it was. And the moment I snapped out of it, I felt like something jumped out of my chest and up through my head, and I just remember like a lot of black fur, wet black fur, and whatever it was felt like it jumped out of me in this like cloud of this round billow of smoke, and then it tumbled out the door really quickly. Right away I was extremely confused about what was going on. For a second I thought like someone had gotten into the house, or I thought that you were having a nightmare or something, and then I saw how upset you were, and then you told me what happened, and then I sobbed hysterically for like half an hour. We almost went to the hospital because I couldn't my heart was pounding for at least an hour, and I couldn't get my blood pressure to go back down, and I was terrified. Like, I thought I was gonna have a heart attack. I was so scared. We started making active changes. I might have had a sleep study done before that. I've had a few sleep studies, and I know that I had one immediately after that because it scared me so much. Either little children have them and they grow out of it, or people with PTSD and different types of trauma have them, and there really isn't a treatment if you're in that second category, unfortunately. There are some things that have been experimented with, but nothing is definitive. My doctor wanted to put me on one medication that I had been on in the past. That medication makes me stop breathing in my sleep, so that wasn't an option.
Yeah, that was creepy.
I know, yeah. And it has mixed results. So the doctor suggested I sleep in a sleeping bag. I can't sleep in a sleeping bag, but I do sleep better when I tuck in the sheets around me, because if my legs are able to swing out of the bed quickly, I find that those are the times when I'll jump out of bed right away. Whereas if I get stuck, I think I probably translate it in my subconscious into, okay, I'm not going to get out of bed, so I don't try.
You sleep on your side.
If I sleep on my back and I'm able to sit up very easily, I find that I have them more often. So I've started trying to mostly sleep on my side or on my stomach.
We also started recognizing, like, if we went to bed at midnight, you're more likely to have one. But if we went to bed once we went past midnight, we'd pretty much have to stay up until 2.
Yeah.
Because if we went to bed between 2 and 3, you were less likely to have them. But before 2, it happened. So we started staying up a little later or going to bed earlier. If we go to bed around 11,
yeah,
it works out. But
that made a big difference.
With me working retail, that's never really been an option. Several nights a week I'm at work until 10, so.
Most of the time, I guess I'm opening my eyes in my sleep right before the night terrors happen, and if I see any type of light, if I see the outline of anything, something in my brain is translating it into a threat. So we started covering lights with electrical tape. The curtains weren't dark enough, so we started hanging like a black comforter over the window.
We made sure that anything that's going to look like a weird shape, like we had made sure to keep our closet doors shut. So if we were lazy and didn't get our laundry done, we would take like a blanket and throw a robe and throw it over, so it didn't look like there wasn't a lot of different shapes and contrast. So I think what it was when she was able to rationalize what it is, like an animal or a cat. Like a lot of times she saw cats, and so when she was able to rationalize what it is, then it was something that makes sense, and then it was easier to kind of grip onto that, I think. But when it was something that she couldn't necessarily put into words what she was seeing, then she'd have to start describing it, and then
I would snap out of it.
Then she'd snap out of it because she needed more of her faculties to try to figure out what's going on.
Now I sleep with a sleep mask, and the nights where I'm able to keep my sleep mask on all night, I have never had a night terror with my sleep mask on. There has been some preliminary testing done with CBD, if you know what that is. I do take an herbal supplement myself, and that has made incredible leaps and bounds in my progress. What would you suggest to someone?
I still take that second to look and make sure, because the one time I don't will be when there's like a burglar or an animal in the room.
Well, and you need to keep yourself safe as well. So if you need to restrain them, you restrain them.
Yeah, I'll hold on to you, I'll hug you, and be like, hey, it's all right, it's me. And just kind of putting it on me a little bit, like, no, I took care of it, don't worry, you're safe.
Well, and
just try to make you feel safe.
Yeah, and I think us having that routine now where that's always your reaction has helped me, because when I wake up and you're comforting me, it puts me into this routine where, like, okay, this is the part where I calm down, and it makes it easier for me to snap out of it quickly and to recover. And there were some, like the one where I attacked you, like we blessed the house after that, and like we did smudging, and it's kind of hurtful. I know people mean well, but when they say that I need to pray more, that I need to take this to God and rely on Him, and it's like there have been so many times when I've prayed about it and believed that God is going to fix it, and when people tell me I need to pray more, it's really hurtful, because it's kind of like an attack on my relationship with God, and I don't feel like that's the problem. And I pray every day, and I pray before bed, and I do pray about this a lot, and I think there are some journeys that you just have to take for whatever reason, and this is my journey for now, and I'm happy with where my trauma therapy took me for the most part, but if there are other treatments out there that have been helpful for this kind of thing, I'm always going to be open to doing more. People can eventually heal from anything, but I think I'm at sort of a plateau with that right now, and hopefully later on I can do some kind of a treatment that's going to make it better, but for now this is kind of where I am. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out my main channel, subscribe to this channel, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them.